Hello, guys and gals, and welcome. So I finally had some time on my hands to really get a good look at the Nintendo Switch 2, not only in its docked mode, but I also used it downstairs in its handheld mode, as well as tabletop mode. I played around with the top USB-C charging port, all sorts of various things, and honestly, I'm really impressed. Overall, I think the Nintendo Switch 2 is like a highly refined and just better version of the Nintendo Switch 1 in just about every way, including new features that the Nintendo Switch 1 is just not capable of. In fact, you know what? Let's bring myself up a little bit so I can show you the Nintendo Switch 1, and we'll compare it versus the Nintendo Switch 2, and so forth and so on. So the Nintendo Switch 1 and the Nintendo Switch 2 are completely different units. I got the green screen on, so it's interacting with the screen in a very odd way. So the Nintendo Switch 2 is much larger than the Nintendo Switch 1, first off. So I have the Nintendo Switch 1 here. This is my original Nintendo Switch 1. And I'm going to hold them up next to each other so you can really get like a good idea of like the size of these things. Like putting them side by side, you can clearly see that the Nintendo Switch 1 is much smaller than the Nintendo Switch 2. More so than that, like the screen size on the Nintendo Switch 1 is much smaller. In general, the Nintendo Switch 1 is a much smaller unit than the Nintendo Switch 2. And it even feels lighter, like when you hold them in your hand. The Joy-Cons definitely are much more robust than the previous versions. The original Joy-Cons were very small and like almost baby-like, and the new Joy-Cons are much meatier. And if you put them right next to each other side by side, you can clearly see that the Joy-Con of the original is much smaller. The joystick is smaller. The buttons are smaller. Even the placement of the shoulder buttons is different, where they basically wrapped the shoulder button around where the shoulder button doesn't wrap around on the new unit. It just feels more comfortable in general than the original Switch. And quite honestly, I think for the most part, the original Switch is although I'm sure still going to be around for a very long period of time, and many people are going to have them, the Nintendo Switch 2 is in every way basically better than the original Switch, and I absolutely adore the new Nintendo Switch. Putting the old Nintendo Switch aside, um, the new Nintendo Switch, the Nintendo Switch 2, has a lot of features that the Nintendo Switch 1 does not. First off, it can go up to 4K resolution in docked mode up to 60 hertz. It can also go 1440p up to 120 hertz, and it also has a 1080p screen with 120 hertz on the screen itself, which is absolutely amazing. And when you play games like Mario Kart World, you will definitely see like a difference like in the frame rate, because like Mario Kart World is 100% like a high FPS game. And when you play it, you're going to notice it's a high FPS game. It just feels so smooth and so nice. Um, Speaking of the size of the Nintendo Switch, somebody asked if it was bigger than a chinchilla. Well, there's a chinchilla for you right there, and you can clearly see for yourself how big the Nintendo Switch is in terms of its chinchilla prowess. And as you can see, chinchillas are pretty fat. They're pretty fat. And this is Dusty Bones, and he is a chonky boy. he left little he left little tiny feet imprints all over the screen. I'll have to clean that off later. I got a little cleaning pad. Um, Overall, though, I really, really enjoy the Nintendo Switch 2. I think it is a logical next step forward in game consoles. Like I've never been a big console person. I like PCs more than anything. And with that being said, like the mouse and keyboard is my preferred method of control. Well, the new Nintendo Switch has a mouse connector or a like port right there. See this right here? This little square? This is the mouse port. And when you use the Nintendo Switch, you can use it as a mouse. So you can turn this Joy-Con sideways like this, and you can basically just use it as a mouse. And we'll go over this. I actually have a couple games I could show you where it actually functions extraordinarily well as a mouse. And without further ado, let's get this onto the dock. Which, speaking of the dock does not look like that. I don't know what that dock is. That's not what the Nintendo Switch 2 dock looks like. This is just a wallpaper that I brought up specifically so that I could show you like something in the background before I put the Nintendo Switch on the dock, which we now have it on the dock. So let's go ahead and bring my shelf back down to a more realistic level. And here's an example of Mario Kart right here. So Mario Kart World has a very nice resolution and also frame rates. The problem is that I can't really show it to you because I can either show you the 4K or I can show you the high frame rate, but I can't really show you both. My suggestion would be is that if you really want to get a high, a good idea of essentially how good the frame rate is on this new system, my suggestion would be to go to a place that has a demo unit and play Mario Kart World. The Mario Kart World, I'm pretty sure is 120 hertz capable. And on top of that, if you're playing in handheld mode, you're going to get the 120 hertz feel. So like playing in handheld mode on the system, you're definitely going to see that 120 frame rate while you're playing Mario Kart World, which is really good. Speaking of the system itself, it is compatible with pretty much all the original Nintendo Switch 1 games. So if you have a huge plethora of Nintendo Switch 1 games like I do, it pretty much plays all of them with a few exceptions. And on top of that, it also plays them better than it did on the Nintendo Switch 1. So the load times will be faster, the frame rate will be better, it'll be less jankety in the way that it plays. People have reported that a lot of the games that were kind of borderline unplayable because the Nintendo Switch 1 just really wasn't a powerful enough system to play them. The Nintendo Switch 2 is essentially putting out the power needed to kind of stabilize the games. They're being backwards compatible with the entire previous generation is freaking huge. Like, you don't understand how rare this is in the world of consoles, like being able to actually play all the games from the previous generation. Very few consoles on the gaming market at all have been completely backwards compatible with all the other games. And on top of that, they're also offering small upgrades, like $10 upgrades for things like Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and Zelda Breath of the Wild, as well as some free upgrades as well to the Nintendo Switch 2 versions. Now, why are there Nintendo Switch 2 versions and why are there Nintendo Switch 1 versions? Why not just automatically upgrade everything? Well, apparently, the Nintendo Switch 2 is completely different than the Nintendo Switch 1 and does not utilize the same software that the Nintendo Switch 1 utilized. So a game programmed for the Nintendo Switch 1 is only programmed for the Nintendo Switch 1. How does the Nintendo Switch 2 actually handle this? Well, according to the Welcome Tour, which I actually went through the entirety of if you want to see it on my live streams, they basically said that the Nintendo Switch 2 is actually rewriting the code for the Nintendo Switch 1 game on the fly, which allows it to basically turn that Nintendo Switch 1 game into a Nintendo Switch 2 game in the process. So it does have to use a considerable amount of processing power to take the Nintendo Switch 1 game and convert it into a Nintendo Switch 2 playable game. So it's not actually a Nintendo Switch 2 game, which is the problem. So the upgrades are essentially turning the Nintendo Switch 1 version of the game into a Nintendo Switch 2 version, which allows it to put the full performance essentially behind that game when it's launched. So essentially, whenever you launch any of these games that are Nintendo Switch 1, the Nintendo Switch 2 is doing a bunch of processing in the background to convert the game on the fly into a Nintendo Switch 2 title. Which allows it to play on the Nintendo Switch 2, which does use a considerable amount of processing power. It's actually outlined in the World Welcome Tour. So if you go into the Welcome Tour, there is a full breakdown of the technical specifications of how it's achieved, which is pretty darn cool. The actual launch titles for the game, kind of light. There's not very many launch titles for the game right now. In fact, if I hop into the eShop, I can show you the current launch titles. So the recent releases, we have things like Mario Kart World, the new Undertale game, Cyberpunk, which is a remake, a re-release of an older title. Welcome Tour is nothing more than a
Hello.
Welcome Tour is nothing more than a tech demo, mini game thing. It's $10. So it's not really all that bad anyway. Fantasy Life is new. Bravely Default is a remake. Street Fighter 6 and so forth and so on. The fact of the matter is there's very few launch titles for the system right now, and that is part of the issue. So what titles are coming in the future? Well, there are a lot of titles coming in the future, and I do have a list of all those titles, chronologically based from when they are going to be released. And basically, let's go over the list. So first off, let's cover the GameCube. So the GameCube emulator is actually exclusive to the Nintendo Switch 2. I'm assuming it has to do with processing power. And the reason why the Nintendo Switch 2 is capable of GameCube games is obvious. It's just a much more powerful system. It's exclusive, and there's only a few games in there right now. So if you open it up at the moment, the only games that are in there are Soul Calibur 2, Wind Waker, the GameCube edition, not the Wii U edition, and F-Zero GX. Now, in the future, they plan on adding Super Mario Sunshine, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, Super Mario Strikers, Luigi's Mansion, Pokemon Coliseum, and Chibi Robot. Those are the ones that are going to be making it to the GameCube emulator first. Of course, they probably have other titles planned, but those are the only ones that we currently have like word on. As for the other titles, like the Nintendo Switch 2 specific games that are going to be coming out, I do have a full list of those as well, and I'm going to go over those for you guys. So there's Raidu Remastered, which is coming out soon. There's also the Tamagotchi Plaza, the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Shadow Labyrinth, Super Mario Party Jamboree Plus, EA Sports Madden NFL 26, Story of Seasons, Grand Bazaar, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Starcross World, Daemon Ex Machina, Titanic Scion, which is a kind of like a mech game. That one's actually on the shop right now if you want to like put a heart on it. Pokemon Legends Z and A, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Now I'm actually super excited about Metroid Prime 4. And as soon as Metroid Prime 4 comes out, we're going to be stopping everything and playing a little Metroid Prime 4 for the live stream. I don't know what he's doing. Um, he's being a butt. Kirby Air Raiders, Dragon Drive, Witch Broom, Elden Ring, Tarnis Edition, Borderlands 4, Hyrule Warriors, Age of Imprisonment, Hades 2, Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate is coming to Nintendo Switch 2, Hollow Knight Silk Song eventually, whenever that comes out, Two Point Museum, The Dusk Bloods, 007 First Light, Starseeker, Astroneer, Expeditions, Professor Layton and the New World of Steam, Tomodachi Life, Living the Dream, Rhythm, Heaven, Groove, and Enter the Gungeon. And again, those were in order of when they are going to be released. So some of those are like early 2025, some of them are 2026 early, and some of them are late 2026, depending on the system. I think that's pretty much it with this particular unit. Do I recommend getting it? Yes, I do. I think the Nintendo Switch 2 is an amazing console, a huge step up over the previous units. I mean, the screen is more vibrant and more colorful. It actually, honestly, seems better than the OLED. I know that's kind of a bold statement to say, especially since the OLED screens are very like beautiful just in general, and they tend to have like vibrant colors, very bright in general. But like when I was playing on the Nintendo Switch 2, and I do have the OLED model. The one that I showed you is not the OLED model. My OLED model's downstairs, next to my bed, which is where I usually play it. But like I think this one looks better than the OLED model. It might have something to do with the frame rate. It might have something to do with the HDR. I'm not entirely sure, but overall it felt like this was a more premium unit than the OLED model. So when I look at it, I think to myself that like if you already have a really huge library of Nintendo Switch 1 games, it just makes sense to pick this up so you can play them in a better format. If you don't have a huge library of Nintendo Switch 1 games, well, then there's tons of games for you to potentially peruse on the system. And like I think that the online like family pack, like you can basically get an online family pack for I think it's like what $79.99 a year. It comes with all the emulators, like a ridiculously large amount of emulators. You literally get access to the NES, the Nintendo 64, the Super Nintendo, the GameCube, the Game Boy Advance, the Game Boy regular edition, and also the Sega Genesis should be in here too. So, I mean, get out there and pick one up. I mean, I think that this is a no-brainer these days. I promised I was going to show you guys some footage of the mouse controls too, and I think I forgot to do that. So let's go ahead and pull up Cyberpunk 2077, and I'm going to show you how the mouse controls look in Cyberpunk. Um, there's also a settings in the panel too. So if you go into the settings for the game, you can actually change the like sensitivity and all the other things on there, which is pretty good. All right, so here we are in the menus, and you go into the settings, and you go over to, I believe it's controls. You can set up the mouse sensor controls, and once you get the mouse sensor controls, you can honestly play the game just like you would on PC, which is kind of insane. As you can see, you have quite a bit of customization on the controls themselves for the mouse, and let's go ahead and boot up a save here. One that actually has some people to shoot. So here you can see they have quite a few of the Joy-Con mouse shells already. Like it's something that's already started to proliferate across the internet. There's 3D printed ones, and there's also ones you can purchase from places like GameStop and things like that. I have yet to test them out and actually see which ones are the best shells, but that's something that I may do in the future.
Gotta find a note.
Alright, so let's have a little bit of first-person shooter action so you guys can get a feel for how the mouse controls work. So as soon as I activate this elevator, we should get an onslaught of people coming to murder us.
V, do you hear that? Shit. Bastards caught up to us again.
Songbird.
Hey, bad news this time. Hansen's dogs caught your scent. Assault incoming. You probably got spotted outside. Either way, get ready.
What now?
Got a surprise for our guests. Making the final adjustments now.
Ends up being a surprise to
Visit Need that.
Myers, we gotta engage him. Song's on the case.
Take him down! Technique's lacking! To get the job done!
So easy to snipe with this gun. Let's go ahead and reload though, it's only got 3 shots. We already used 2 of the 3. Close range sniping, not the best.
Fuck!
Starting to heat up in here, Songbird.
Working on it. Hold on tight.
Switch to a more short range weapon.
Take him down! Head in the game! Keep him busy!
This guy has like a big old frickin' cannoneer gun. Thing's ridiculous. It's like an M249 or something. Sometimes you can kill them and take it.
Almost there. Still milking that for a while.
Sometimes you can. Sometimes you can. Not shotgun shells. Let's just switch to the pistol.
Where the hell they get irons like that? Stand by!
This gun's a little confusing. It has the ability to fire off like multiple projectiles at the same time, and one of the problems with it is that like half the time you're trying to fire off quick succession shots and it starts to do like a charge up or something. It's really weird, and the charge up like prevents it from firing the shot properly because it's trying to charge up a shot instead, and I don't like it. My weapon selection is absolutely awful, but as you can see, I was able to pinpoint headshot somebody from very far away, even do some no-scope headshots, a couple of them. And on top of that, like it's just a very good mouse in general. I'm currently playing on the preview, not actually on a real monitor, so it's not quite as good for me. But hopefully, you guys see the full resolution. I have great hopes for this mouse technology. I think that this is going to be like a huge wave of the future. Like having a easily and readily accessible mouse on a portable device, which you can take anywhere with you, essentially, it's absolutely insane. This is freaking great. I think that's pretty much it when it comes to this particular system. I love it. I think it's definitely worth purchasing. Some people have some complaints on the like price of the system, but most systems are sold at a loss anyway. Sony lost like $3.3 billion when they sold the PlayStation 3. Like most companies will go out of their way to sell consoles at a loss to get them into your house. So while I might understand you guys saying that the console is too expensive, I can't really understand the other part of it where you guys say things like, Nintendo's just making too much money off of us. When it's actually more the opposite, which is that the console is most likely being sold at or very near a loss, and Nintendo's probably not making much of any money at all off of the console itself. And it's pretty much similar to like printers and ink. They'll pretty much give you the printer for free because they know they can make money off the ink. Nintendo is hoping to make money off the games, not the console. That's just for your information. The console's actually a steal at this particular point. Speaking of the console's ability to be purchased, I guess we can go over that really quickly too. Is that well, it's been relatively well in stock. I'm actually kind of surprised at the number of consoles that people have actually managed to get their hands on. Nintendo has definitely shipped a large amount of product and has made it definitely accessible to a large number of people, which is definitely very good. I think all in all, the launch has gone rather smoothly, except for not having a huge number of first-party titles and exclusives. The console launch has gone off without a hitch for the most part. I heard that it had like 3.3 million in sales within the first couple days, which is crazy because the PlayStation 5 didn't have 3.3 million sales, I think, until like 2 months later, as an example. And I think it's very clear that Nintendo is dominating the current console market with these consoles. Like, these things are just absolutely amazing. They're amazing consoles for your home to put onto your TV. They're amazing portable devices to take with you. And now they're also dominating the mouse market as well. Like, this is absolutely amazing in terms of like what it does as a mouse. I'm just enamored with the mouse function. I think the other companies are going to be copying them. Anyway, without further ado, thank you for watching. Be sure to hit that like button, that subscribe button if you enjoy the content. And as always, keep watching.